None of Kingpin's men had ever held their own with Daredevil like Maya did. She did better than even Kingpin expected. Of course. Of course she did. So I received a link to watch the first 3 episodes of Echo. The review embargo doesn't lift until the day this series goes live, from what I can tell. I don't know if this is a typical thing, because this is the first time I've received an advance screener of a live-action Marvel series. I did receive the entire second series of What If, but they didn't have the review embargo on it to the extent that this one does. So I don't know if this is just an indication that they don't think this series is going to be well received, or if this is just the way they've done it for the live action shows. No clue. So I honestly was not interested to watch this show, and I only watched it because they sent me a link to the first 3 episodes. So I thought, okay, I'll watch it and see if this changes my mind about the character and about whether or not this show is worth it to me. And I'll answer both of those questions with one word, and that answer is no, it didn't. It didn't change my mind about the character. I've never liked this character ever since she was in Hawkeye. In fact, Hawkeye was a show that was supposed to be about Hawkeye, and it ended up being more about this chick Hawkeye wannabe and this character named Maya, and I didn't like either one of those characters. That's why I didn't like the show Hawkeye. And they're creating an entire show around Echo. So I'll go over what I guess can be perceived as some pros. I have heard it mentioned that this was a pretty dark show. It's got some violence in it. Yeah, it's got more violence than is typical in some aspects. I'll give you an example. We see people getting shot and we see blood spatter. That sort of stuff. There's a lot of fights in here, but then there's a lot of fights in other Marvel shows too, I guess. I haven't seen all of them. Granted, I haven't watched Secret Invasion, and I'm glad I didn't. So it's not like the violence was Netflix Daredevil level of violence. Not like that. But, okay, if you want to see that as a pro, it's what, rated TV MA or something like that. So, and it sort of ish has a darker tone. I do have some kudos to give to them for the child actor who played Child Maya. I didn't dig into this to find out, but that child looks very much like adult Maya. It almost makes me wonder if they're related somehow. So they did a really good job on that casting. If she's not, that is eerie, because she really does look like child version of Maya. Now, I can't remember if Child Maya showed up in the Hawkeye show, but in this show, there are scenes which I believe, if memory serves me correctly, scenes that have been partially repurposed from Hawkeye. I think just to kind of fill you in as to what's going on with this character, who she is, and leading you up to this point in her life. So I don't really have an issue with that. The guy who played her dad was in there a little bit, but we know what happens to her dad in Hawkeye. So, unfortunately, he wasn't around enough for me. I really like that actor. I remember being bummed when his character got killed in Hawkeye. So that's about the extent of the pros for me, y'all. I was not a fan of this show. I've got multiple cons, and I'll go through them to the best of my ability. One of the first things I wrote under the cons was, oh shit, she's a girl boss. Oh my gosh. This chick. This show is going the route of the Disney live action movies, the Disney Marvel live action movies, MCU live action movies. The tough girl, she's so tough, she's so badass. Most guys can't beat her. She can hold her own pretty well against Daredevil, even better than all of Kingpin's other men have done. It was a little bit much. It was too much. Y'all have seen a leak. So Okay, moving on from that, there's also things that happen in here that bothered me just because it didn't even make any sense, because most people would know that this is not how you're supposed to treat a wound. I'll give you an example. There's a part where a character is tending to a wound that they have, and they're gonna stitch it up, but they make no effort to sanitize the wound, like at all. They just stitch it up. And they're in a place where they can sanitize the wound, but they don't. That went under the con category because that was annoying. If that was the only thing about this show, honestly, that aggravated me, I would just point it out as an issue, but I wouldn't really consider it a huge con. Well, there's other stuff that aggravates me. Just there's a line in here. Okay, first of all, the character of Echo, I don't like her because she's a criminal. She worked for Kingpin. Then we saw what happened between her and Kingpin in the Hawkeye. And now, see, they're getting agitated for me. And now she wants to basically take over the empire. So she's not really showing any sort of redeeming qualities for me. She's not giving me anything for me to root for her. She's basically just trying to manhandle her way into taking over a criminal empire. I don't like her. That right away sets the stage for me not to like her. Then she comes up with stupid crap lines like, Kingpin had his run, it's time for a queen. Oh gosh, please. And also, I didn't like how Kingpin was treated in Hawkeye. Now, Kingpin is a baddie. I'm not rooting for him, but what they did with his character in Hawkeye, they took him and they pansified him. He wasn't even a scary character anymore. He was just this wuss. Daredevil, he was freaking scary. And in Hawkeye, he was just reduced to this big, huge wimp of a guy, and the way he acted with Maya, and like all of a sudden Maya's part of his world, and I know this was part of the whole thing in the comics, I know that, but the way they inserted her character into the Hawkeye show is like, we need to now introduce this character, so here she is, and here's her history with Kingpin, and then in the process of doing that, Kingpin comes across as an absolute wuss. He does not have the same impact and effect on me, the viewer, as he did in Daredevil, where that scene with the car door in Daredevil, oof, that struck me very hard. Now, part of that is because of I watched it a little bit too closely after a tragic event that had happened in our family. So that really maybe hit me harder than it would have. But I think even if that weren't the case, it still would have impacted me because that scene was brutal. And it was brutal in its simplicity. And in the Hawkeye show, and by extension, the exposure we've had to Kingpin throughout parts of Echo, he's just reduced to just, I don't know, like this attempt at being what he was in Daredevil, but it's just not the same. Also, there's other stupid stuff in here, like there's a point where a character jumps from a train onto a truck, but the physics just wouldn't work right for the way that this character ended up landing and then finally pulling themselves into a certain position. The physics wouldn't have, I mean, unless this character was Superman, and they're not supposed to be Superman. So that was aggravating. And I was watching the subtitles for this show because sometimes there's noise around me, you know, like the dogs running in and out and barking and whatever. So I was watching it with subtitles on, and the subtitles was saying thrilling music playing. To me, it was hardly a thrilling scene. Yeah, there was action going on, but some of that music was just the most generic sort of music. I didn't care. I wasn't invested in this character. So I honestly didn't care. I mean, part of me just wants her character to just be killed off because I just don't like her. The intro credits of this show are more interesting to me than Echo herself is. I don't care about her. All of this effort that they go through to show us her background and her ancestry and all that, that feels a bit over the top and ridiculous too. There are flashback scenes that are shown with like some Native American, I think they're Choctaws or whatever. And there's a scene that happens where some of the characters are engaged in some type of competition. And I'm trying to keep things not too specific, but that scene was eyeball rolling because there's a female character in there, and her interactions with the guys around her and even theirs with hers was so over the top and ridiculous, and the way they acted the scene was just cringe. To me, it was cringe. It did not work. It did not come across as authentic and organic. It came across as forced and lame. And the acting in here by the main character, I was reading up on her and saw that this was her first acting gig. And it shows, you guys. I don't think she's that good of an actor. Yes, she's deaf. Yes, she's missing part of one leg. To me, that doesn't qualify her as being a competent actor for this role. To me, she's just not. Maybe it's good that she's not talking too much, because I feel like if she actually vocalized her lines, that would make her lack of acting talent even more apparent. She's got this scowly look on her face half the time because she's supposed to convince us that she's this badass tough chick, and for me, it just does not work. It fell flat. I didn't buy into her being this badass because I knew, I could tell by the writing and where it was going from the first episode. I mean, I could kind of tell that back in Hawkeye, but I could tell they were going for the girl bossy type of thing. And that immediately turns me off to a female character. I'm going to contrast her character with a character in Extraction 1 and 2. That chick was awesome. You know why? Because she was believable. I could believe that she was tough and could kick ass, but I also believed that she was vulnerable and she could get her ass kicked, and she did. There was realism with her. With Echo, oh no, she can pretty much take down everybody around her. Are you kidding? Come on. And so then, sorry, Artur's making a smoothie, of course. And so then when there are moments where she is kind of incapacitated and can't sort of fight, it's like, well, I don't buy that she's truly vulnerable, because at some point she's going to be able to do something to kick ass again. So I just, sadly, I feel like Echo is just continuing the tradition of lackluster content from Disney's MCU. And it definitely did not do the job it needed to do to convince me that they had quality content for us. It just underscored what I've already known about the direction that the MCU is going in. Granted, I did go into this not really caring about the character, not all that interested in her anyway, but if the writing in this had been solid, and if her acting had won me over, I would be the first one to tell you that. But it didn't. In fact, it was just another nail in the coffin. Eventually, that coffin's going to be completely sealed up. I just don't feel like she was an interesting enough character to center an entire show around. Specifically, an interesting enough character that we were presented in the Hawkeye show. Maybe the comic book character is very interesting. This live action version of her is not. I don't care about her. I don't pull for her. She doesn't have any redeeming qualities that attract me to her as a character. She's not very nuanced. So this show didn't work for me, unfortunately. Obviously, you guys, your mileage may vary, because everybody feels differently about the stuff that they watch and the things that they like, and this might have plenty of fans, but I'm definitely not going to be one of them. I still feel like the best Marvel live action series show was WandaVision. That was the first one, and yes, it kind of fell apart in the end. The last episode was anticlimactic, and I didn't like the big huge air battles that happened, but at least I felt invested in the characters, and it was written in such a way that really kept me engaged. And Loki, other shows that have completely lost me. Loki, I couldn't even finish because I couldn't stand female Loki, and they reduced the regular normal Loki to an absolute joke and laughing stock. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was absolutely ridiculous and idiotic, and the stupid preachy tone and the contrived events that happened in there with some of the characters was so over the top. It was just ridiculous. What else have I seen? I did like Moon Knight okay. I didn't hate it. What other shows? Oh, Hawkeye. Didn't like Hawkeye. And I definitely don't don't like this. So they're just continuing the tradition. Oh, She-Hulk, I stayed away from. At first I thought, wow, that's great casting, but no, I stayed away from that show, and I'm glad I did. Someone mentioned in a recent live stream that I was watching, I think it was Polly on the Latino Slant. He said something about, I'm paraphrasing because now I don't remember the exact words. It was something along the line of, well, at least people are talking about Echo, or she's getting attention or whatever. The only reason she's getting attention is because of Daredevil, because Daredevil has been linked into this. That's the only reason that I think most people are halfway interested in this. And if that's what you're going in here being excited about, well, I'll tell you, the first few episodes that I saw don't really give you much to stay excited about. But like I said, I haven't seen the last two. So you guys let me know if that changes. So yeah, they're just continuing the tradition of not winning me over, losing me more and more and more. So those are my thoughts on Echo. When you guys get a chance to watch it, which from what I understand, it's going live as of the day that this review goes up. It's going live the same day. That's when the review embargo lifts. You're supposed to get all of the episodes at once. I think it's supposed to be 5. Some other place I'd seen it mentioned that it was going to be 6, but I think it's 5. I'm only seeing 5. So there's 2 more episodes left, and to be honest, I don't even care to finish. If you guys take the time to watch this, maybe you'll have a different experience, but I am curious to know what you think either way. Whether you liked it, whether you hated it, what you thought about the plot. Okay, I could rant on and on about how much I dislike this show, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so that I can go ahead and get it edited. And that's it for now. Nos vemos.